So the true ROI comes out of rethinking, redesigning the way your company is working today and how it is supposed to work in the future, taking into consideration the latest technology that is available, topics like AI and other innovations, and how that can basically boost your operations and can help your business to grow. This is the perspective that you need, for which you need to have good change management in place to be able to take that position in. And if you have achieved that, then you will see that a digital transformation enables new service offerings towards customers.
Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where we explore trends, current events, and innovations impacting the logistics and supply chain industries. I'm your host, Ellen Wood. Today, we're going to explore the transformative power of digitalization and logistics, focusing on how SAP is reshaping the way businesses manage their supply chains. Today, I'm joined by Michael and Andrea from Westernacher, a global leader in SAP consulting, to discuss how cutting-edge solutions are solving today's challenges and preparing for logistics in the future. Michael, Andrea, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So let's get into our topic today. It is all about planning and preparing for what's to come in supply chain and logistics and using the digital tools that we have available to us. So what are some of the hurdles when it comes to a digital transformation? We talk about this a lot in supply chain, where we need to, rely on the data, and companies are incorporating more digital tools into their planning processes. But what does that really mean, and what do they need to look out for? Michael, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, sure. And I immediately want to pick up on what you have said, right? Because you have mentioned two very good aspects already. One is data, and the other one is, in general, the topic of collaboration as such. Yeah? And when we are talking about digital transformation, first of all, a lot of our customers that we are talking about are quite far away from the current trends that are around in technology. And
Mm-hmm.
the logistics industry as such is quite a traditional industry that from time to time has its hurdles to change, and also to change the way they work, which leads to the fact that a lot of our customers are, from their entire innovation portfolio still and technology portfolio, still quite far away from what is already there. And that means that topics like data management and how do I share data, how do I store data, what do I do with sensible data that I might be gathering today, what can I do with that, is really a very new topic to our customers. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So it is really about, first of all, the entire topic of data management. Yeah? So what data is around? What is it that I can additionally capture nowadays with the latest technology that is there? But then obviously also, what can I do with that? Yeah, because I don't only want to store data somewhere and have it lying around. I want to use that data going forward in order to get some value out of it. And that value, most of the times, comes also from requirements that a lot of customers have to logistics service providers nowadays, which is a much more increased visibility into anything that happens when something is in transit from A to B. Yeah? So if I'm gathering data, and if I have a very good visibility tracking into my transportation, I can provide that data as part of a visibility to my customers and let them know in real time where their goods are, whether they are stuck in a port, whether they are in transit, what's the status on customs, and so on and so forth. And that's the foundation for that is all data in the end of the day. And for that, you need to make sure that that you manage data in the right way, that you know which data to store, and that you also understand the value of data in that sense. And one thing that I also want to mention here is that the other trend, and this is also what data is very, very important for, is what I've already said, right? So customers' expectation toward logistics service providers is that they are getting much more information on their transportation, on their goods that they have. And this goes nowadays through a lot of business networks and concepts that are going into that direction of business networks, where when I'm a manufacturer of goods, that I automatically through integration am getting updates from my logistics service provider on the orders that I, for example, just shipped. And for that, you need good data integrated through business networks, so that basically this information flow is also then being enabled.
So the maturity path that a lot of these companies are on, if I hear you right, is still very, very young with a lot of these companies. They know that they need to, they know that they want to, but they haven't built up that infrastructure in their own organization yet in order to either handle the data or understand what the data is telling them. So for these companies that are very, very young in their maturity in terms of handling and processing this data, other than just getting started and really jumping in with both feet and embracing the power of data and utilizing the different tools that are available to them, what is something else that will make this journey harder? Just starting to use data is easy to say, but it's hard in practice. So what makes that so difficult to take that next step in their maturity to get to the point where all of this data is working together and giving them actionable information?
I think the integration strategy is key in get this data actionable. So today we see two major trends. From one side, the selection of best-of-breed applications that are excelling in their own domain. And on the other hand, on the extreme opposite, we have companies that are going for an holistic platform like SAP. So best-of-breed solution exceed in their specialization, but often they demand a significant effort of integration to have the data flowing between them, to have data consistency, and think about also updates among different systems. On the other side, the holistic platform like SAP is reducing silos within the organizations. They simplify maintenance, updates, scalability, and provide end-to-end visibility for better decision-making or supporting standard processes and operational processes efficiency. And this can help to have a long-term vision for a company from system perspective and to grow. And why integration is important? Basically, I see three main factors. One is the cost, because interfaces are very expensive and they draw resources to design, to develop, to maintain just interfaces, okay, without any value added, okay. The other key factor is the time. So implementing multiple standard interfaces, interfaced system takes longer than just one single holistic solution and platform, an integrated system. And then the risk, because the integration is one of the common reasons for project suboptimal performances, okay? So all these factors has to be considered. Talking about data flow, what you just mentioned. So basically, you have the data, but you need the data at the right time to take the decision. So, and we have so many examples, okay? And then think about technology evolution. From one side, you have the data, and the power of data is integrating the data. Think about, for example, an order of a customer, integrating the data about the kind of product he is shipping, the value, the estimated time of arrival of this product, help logistics to run better, okay? And if this simple data is not available, basically operators are just reacting or always acting the good old traditional way. On the other side, we have another factor that is the technology and the innovation. Think about artificial intelligence, how to adopt artificial intelligence. So having a single holistic platform like SAP helps to embed the new technologies like the artificial intelligence. That is really driving optimization based on real-time data. And this can be done only if you have an integrated and holistic platform. Just to give an example, okay.
Michael, anything to add?
Nothing to add, but I want to second one thing, and Andrea mentioned it already. And we actually, it's a nice example that we can also provide from the real world of our project work, and that is the silos within a corporation. Yeah, so we work right now with a logistics service provider, for example, that is embracing their digital transformation and moving into this one holistic platform, which in this case is SAP, for all of their end-to-end processes within the organization. So that includes finance, that includes order management, so taking in the orders for transportation, that includes their operations. So basically taking care of the transportation from A to B to C, all the charge calculation. So everything that is going to be done in this holistic platform. And one of the key targets of this project is breaking silos within the company. Why? Mm-hmm. Because today, finance is not talking to operations, and operations is not talking to customer service. And that is exactly one of these key things that is a major hurdle on the one side, because breaking these silos is very, very, very difficult, especially when we talk about change management. But on the other side, the value gain is so high. But the only way how you can break these silos is by providing an integrated platform that is able to cover all these processes and tie everything together and all parties within that end-to-end process together, so that we bring also the stakeholders in that process closer to each other, although they might be sitting in the same office.
Mm-hmm. No, and you make an excellent point about, breaking down these silos. And I know we've been talking about this for a few years in the industry, that the business units need to be able to have access to the data from other siloed units in order to make the most conclusive decisions based on the entire business and not just that one section of the business. But the change management is so important, because when we start to try to break down those silos, there's going to be resistance when those business units are challenged in the way that they've traditionally operated. And that change management is so difficult to overcome. It's really got to be a very comprehensive program in and of itself. Just getting, new technology adopted into the organization is one thing, but then to make it so that it is a positive change, a positive for the business, requires a lot of interpersonal and, it's a whole process. The change management in and of itself is its own project. Andrea, can you talk to us a little bit about how that is progressing in the industry? Because I know we've talked about it a number of times, but is it getting better? The adoption rate, the change management, the way that we're going about bringing in these new technologies into organizations?
This is a very good question. So we are implementing SAP in many organizations. But innovation extend far beyond the mere software update. It's not just software update or technology enhancement. It represents an holistic approach that integrates processes, people, and technology. And in order to achieve a meaningful transformation, basically, from one side, the processes, basically innovation often demand reevaluating or redesigning workflow, system, and methodologies. So it's not just a software upgrade, because you will never pay for a project to have what you have today. So you have to think about the future. So if a future-proof solution needs to be redesigned, rethink, in order to get all the future enhancement, all the enhancement that will come in the future. So it is about questioning the status quo and finding smarter way to achieve organizational goals. This is about processes. About people, in the basically at the heart of any innovation initiative are with the individuals, with a single person who drive and sustain change from the top to the bottom. Okay. And this involves equipping team, involving team with the necessary skills, okay, fostering culture of creativity and collaboration and resilience. And then we have a third element that is the technology. So, of course, the technology is there and play a pivotal role as a platform to enable all this. Okay. And about change management. So basically, we saw in many projects that effective change management is critical to navigate to the disruption, and involves several parts. So first of all, engaging stakeholders is key. So building the buy-in from every stakeholders. It is important to change management to address resistance because in the human being is always resistant to change. Okay, so understanding concern and mitigating fears about change is very important. Then as well, another element is the adoption, ensuring the adoption of the new. So providing training, support, informing people about the new that will be the real world for in the future, since tomorrow, and the clear benefits. And then continuous improvement. So it's not just one step, but you will have innovation is an ongoing journey, so a continuous improvement. So that's the reason why change management is always important, especially in a software implementation, to evolve the full company to the future-proof company, basically prepared for the future.
So one aspect of this that all of the leadership is going to be very interested in, and to your point, it is top down, the change management. So on the other side of that is once they have gone through the effort of, number one, finding the technology, whether it's the the best of breed or whether it is a holistic platform, they've gone through that. They've gone through the change management. Now we need to see the ROI. We need to see results. So what is the most difficult part of measuring that, especially when there are so many other aspects going on? So we've got all of these process change. We've got, people who we've had to have buy into this. Now we've got obviously a potential new technology. We're doing things differently. How do we measure that we're successful at this implementation?
There are multiple ways how you can measure the success of an implementation in the end of the day. Yeah. And it can be for a logistics service provider to very, very easy or very profane things like efficiency,
right,
increased profitability that you have in your services, because these are typically the things that we are pointing out. But the thing is also that I want to say when we talk about a return on investment, and this is one of what I also see, because you have asked that as a first question, right? What are the hurdles in digital transformation for logistics service providers? It's also partially the expectation towards such a program and what we are getting out of this, because it's very clear that a digital transformation is not a system upgrade. It's not, we are looking at one part of our siloed operation that we are now going to make better in terms of new system, whatever, and then all of a sudden things will be turning around. It's exactly not that, and this has implications to the ROI. So it's not a replacement of as-is processes. It's not just a system upgrade. If you look at this from that perspective, your ROI case is going to be very underwhelming. So the true ROI comes out of rethinking, redesigning the way your company is working today and how it is supposed to work in the future, taking into consideration the latest technology that is available, topics like AI and other innovations, and how that can basically boost your operations and can help your business to grow. This is the perspective that you need, for which you need to have good change management in place to be able to take that position in. And if you have achieved that, then you will see that a digital transformation enables new service offerings towards customers, which one example that we have already said, right? Increased visibility, but also potentially other value-added services that I'm able to now provide along the process, or very simply just operating more efficiently and more profitable. Yeah, and we have customers, and you will not believe that we have customers who tell us we do not know whether we are profitable with a certain service that we are offering. We, of course, know on a high level when we do our year-end balance and everything, whether we have made money or made a loss. But bottom, basically on the bottom of our operation, when I'm offering a service, I do not know whether that's going to be profitable or not. Yeah, I know what I'm charging my customer, but I don't know what my cost is. Yeah, and these are exactly the topics that need to be looked at in order to unleash this return on investment. In order to see, okay, when we do a transformation, when we do an implementation, when we start seeing these things, can we take adjustive measures in order to now lower cost, increase profitability, make things more efficient, or whatever these things. And that, as I've said, requires change management, especially on the people side, because technology we can change, and yes, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult than we all like, but changing technology is possible. Changing processes is also a possibility. Changing people, that's the problem, yeah? And that's exactly where a lot of times these digital transformation projects are getting into rough waters, because the visionary leadership thinking is not there in terms of how can we transform our business. And without that, it's very hard to really get a lot of ROI out of any major transformation project.
So what I hear you saying is that it's not enough just to, implement a new technology that has new capabilities and get buy-in from the stakeholders. It's really about making sure that we have that spirit of continuous improvement that is emboldened throughout the organization. Of it's not just this is not some, magic ticket that's going to make everything work suddenly. We have to have the mindset going into this transformation that, number one, with the change management, as Andrea mentioned, that everyone understands what the purpose of the transformation is, but that everyone is also empowered and on board with the idea that it's not just one thing. This isn't one and done. We have to continuously look to improve, and this is going to enable that. But the job's not done as soon as, the software turns on and the data starts filling up the servers. There's more to come. So
exactly.
What does that look like operationally? We've been talking a lot about, the leadership and the stakeholders and organizing this type of transformation. But when it comes to the people on the ground floor in the operations, the day-to-day operations, what are some of the challenges that they're going to face?
It could be, the supply chain visibility, for example, talking about data, the supply chain visibility is essential for maintaining a proactive and responsive supply chain. So it enables organization to monitor and manage the movement of goods, basically, the inventory levels and the processes in real time, ensuring that issues are identified as soon as they happen and address it before they escalate into customer complaint. Why supply chain visibility is critical? Because from one side allows a proactive issue management, basically addressing delays, shortages, disruption. Instead of having a customer calling you, before that can be potentially an issue and you can resolve this issue. Mm-hmm. And this also drives customer satisfaction, resolve problems before they happen, or basically help you to increase the customer satisfaction. On the other hand, operational people like to have a better decision making, use real-time data to quickly adapt, rerouting shipment, for example, or expediting deliveries can be an example. Of course, visibility imply cost savings, avoiding rush fee, penalties, lost sales, while at the same time optimize inventories. And then, of course, you can, with visibility, you can enhance collaboration with your partners, okay? Customers, supplier, service providers. And then as well, there is another aspect that is the regulatory compliance. So ensure proper handling and documentation to meet industry standards. So this can be really how data can be helpful, and visibility for supply chain is key in this transformation to help the people on the ground. Yeah.
All right, Michael, what other challenges do you see?
Yeah, so besides what Andrea just said regarding visibility, of course, when I'm a logistics service provider, another topic is in general capacity and network management. Yeah, and that concerns global logistics service providers that are operating on a global scale and managing also supply chains for their customers. But that also concerns customers that are trucking within the US or within Europe, because what we, I think, can all agree on that is logistics as such is very, very volatile. Yeah? Because we have seen so many examples over the past 5 years alone, and even before, whether it was the global pandemic, which disrupted anything that had happened or that had something to do with moving goods and transporting things from A to B. We have still up until today a situation in the Suez Canal, which is disrupting transportation. We have seen it last year here in the US when the ship hit the bridge in Baltimore, and all of a sudden the port of Baltimore become unavailable. So these are things that are not foreseeable. Yeah, I mean, you cannot foresee that a vessel gets stuck in the Suez, or that politically something's happening. So you cannot foresee these things, but you know that they will happen. Yeah, so that's kind of the thing. So you need to be prepared for black swan events along your daily operation, and that, along with managing your capacities, managing your network, is key, because in the end of the day, only because something bad happens doesn't mean that your customers don't demand the same service for transportation. Yeah, I mean, your customers are transporting goods from Asia to Europe or to the US into their production, where if something is delayed by a week or two, that heavily impacts their production and also then their supply chain. So only because something bad happens doesn't mean that you can now sit back, relax, and say, okay, you know what, something happened here, and this will now take X amount of days more, or we cannot solve that situation. So that is one of the key differentiator. How can I, as a logistics service provider, ensure highest level, although all of these things are happening and I do not really have an influence on? So you need to manage your networks as prescriptive as possible. Yeah. And there are multiple layers how you can do that. Yeah. Prescriptive management is the top layer, where you don't react anymore to things. You plan for these things to happen. At the end of the day, it's like a contingency plan that you're writing up, that you are putting in somewhere, and then when things happen, you just pull it out and say, okay, this is how it's done. And this is one of the key things from an operational perspective to be able to be prepared nowadays, and then also to be able to execute that. And this comes all together to what we have discussed earlier, right? With the holistic platform work that we need. Yeah, because if something happens somewhere along the supply chain or along the transportation chain, and I immediately get notice of it because I'm tracking my vehicle, I'm tracking the shipments that I'm responsible for. If something happens, I can immediately start replanning. I'm getting that visibility that now flows back into operations and allows me to proactively replan if something has happened. If I do not have that level of transparency and visibility in my operations and in my other end-to-end streams, it's becoming very hard for me to react accordingly. And then I'm basically only chasing the problem rather than being ahead of the problem and trying to mitigate that as much as I can.
Yeah, it is absolutely reactive rather than proactive, to your point. And it makes me think of, airline pilots. When you're flying in a plane, and we've all been on a plane, the pilot doesn't know what to do in every possible situation with all the equipment and all of the navigation. If something goes wrong, he has a binder in that cockpit that is going to tell him what to do when this light goes off or that lever says this. And they're not trained for every possible contingency, but because what they're doing is so critical, the airlines, the aircraft manufacturers have developed these contingency plans to tell them, okay, when this happens, this is what you have to do, because you have to get these people safely on the ground, or you have to get these goods safely on the ground. You have to get you safely on the ground in this aircraft. So they have that plan, and businesses don't think that same way, that when something goes wrong, it is that critical, and you have to have a contingency plan. You have to have a plan B, a plan C, and know when to pivot. And to your point, you can't do that unless you know that it's happening. If you wait until, the news reports that there's a problem in the Suez Canal, you're already too late to react to your organization's impact that's going to result from that information. So what about some of the other aspects of, obviously, dealing with when we're talking about transportation and moving goods? One big one, especially when we're talking about customers, and not just internal customers, but end customers, and that's that last mile delivery, and making sure that is executed properly. So what are some of the complexities or hurdles that aspect of the supply chain, which is so important to everyone in the equation, that we can prepare for?
I think a good example is how Amazon have completely changed the perception of everybody has an expectation in terms of last mile delivery and delivery services. Okay, now everybody, either internal, external customer, everybody demand for speed and convenience. Customer now expect near instantaneous delivery of goods or services. Either they belong to the business or they are consumer. Okay. And this is the classical, everybody call Amazon effect. Okay. It changed completely the perception of everyone. Okay. Also personalized experience, the expectation for tailored recommendation on specific product. I think, again, here, artificial intelligence can help from a consumer perspective. Now, in general, consumers expect the business anticipate their need based on prior interaction and preferences. Okay. And also transparency and trust is another element. Basically, customer needs detailed information about the products, the pricing, the delivery time, the timeline. And like Amazon is doing on their website, they also expect reliable customer service on their address, on their specific premises, okay? And also as well, omni-channel availability. You can order business to business, but also you can order online and you get always the product. So, and also another aspect is the low price and the value perception. Basically, you increase the value you get for less money. So that's the generic perception compared to 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So now you want to have always the best option in the market. Okay. And so in that sense, generally speaking, the customer expectation have changed. And this represents for logistics a big revolution in terms of delivering of deliver this expectation and comply with these expectations.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because in order for all of those things to happen, we're coming back to the original issue of having all of that data available. So whether you're, an individual doing your Christmas shopping like I did on Amazon, and you're looking to see, is this available? Can I get it in time? What is the best price for this product? Does this toy come with batteries? Do I need to order those separately? Does it need another piece? Does it have something else that goes with it? What does Amazon suggest, I order to go with it? Or when we're talking about, companies ordering, product for their own production and getting those raw materials, you need to have that information. You need to have all of that information readily available to the consumer, and you need to have it accurate. So I think that that's an amazing point. But one of the other things that I know we're getting into with both last mile delivery and production, and that is all of these sustainability topics. And, when it comes to making sure that we're good stewards of our planet, that we're making sure we're not having, out of control emissions, all of these things are part of the equation. So what are we getting into when it comes to the sustainability aspect here? What are some of those challenges?
So sustainability is a topic that becomes more and more important. Yeah, I mean, across all industries, of course, but for logistics service providers, even more. Yeah, because there is this classification of emissions, right? With scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Yeah, so scope 1 means that's my emissions. I'm sitting in a car driving from A to B. That's my emissions that I'm producing. Mm-hmm. Scope B is then a little bit more indirect, and scope 3 is the emission that is now coming from my downstream or upstream value chain. The problem here is, as a logistics service provider, I'm looking at two of these items. Number one, scope 1 items is my direct emission that I'm responsible for. And if I'm transporting goods, I am going to have emissions, period.
Yes.
That is what it is. And even with technology and everything, trying to mitigate that at such a high pace, still in the foreseeable future, transportation and logistics will have emissions. So that's one thing, right? So how can I reduce my own emissions? We have talked about more efficient processes, but also getting visibility into that. Yeah, because nowadays companies need to report their emissions on a much more detailed level than Absolutely. They needed to do it 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. So I need to have the tools in my toolkit, so to say, that tell me and give me that visibility. How much is it that I'm actually emitting based on my operation? And we are, again, tying this back to the holistic platform, right? If everything sits under one roof, it's easy for me to basically get that information and do a reporting on that, and also identify where can I basically become better. Yeah, is there anything that I can do? Bikes, for example, because I see that my 20, 30-year-old trucks are polluting much more than the trucks that are in the fleet for a newer time. So this is exactly the level of granularity and decision-making that you want to do and that you also want to have. And on the other side, as I've already said, right, scope 3 emissions is what my customers as a logistics service providers are concerned with. Yeah, and what's starting to happen now is that when there is an RFP coming in for transportation and there's a tender for 6 or 12-month contract, when I'm answering that tender as a logistics service provider, I need to provide my emissions. I need to basically give that information already upfront to my customers, because they, in their internal decision-making processes nowadays, have thresholds and have criteria to select service providers that are looking after these topics. So it's not only for me a topic where I need more visibility in terms of knowing what is it that I'm doing, but I also need to make efforts in order to lower this, because otherwise this turns into a business risk, because then I might be losing business because I'm not able to obtain emissions for our customers in the end of the day.
Yeah, probably also in addition to Michael, I would say overall it is also about brand reputation. If you think taking care of sustainability impact of your operation, of course, supply chain is responsible for great part of the carbon footprint of the company. Okay, supply chain is the the place where you can really reduce the carbon footprint of the company. And this has an impact on, of course, on having a greener operation from one side, but also long-term enhance the brand reputation of a company. And also another point is help the company to meet regulatory requirements and at the end aligning with the customer and consumer demand for ethical and eco-friendly practices, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, you make an excellent point, because as we're talking about, data being available, data being visible, another layer of that visibility is to the public at large, and they have access to those, annual reports. They have access to see where companies are reporting on their sustainability practices, and consumers will make that vote with their purchases. And the amount of information that is available to the populace today means that they will absolutely use that data to make their determinations, to make, decisions about who they will purchase from, which brands they will support. And, that kind of information can be amazingly helpful, or it can be horribly detrimental to a brand. So that's an excellent point, that all of this data that we're talking about collecting and managing and, understanding and then making decisions about, whether it is using AI to help us make those decisions quickly, or whether it's talking about the continuous improvement of the organization to be looking at this data on a regular basis and making continuous improvements, that it's not all at once. It is step by step throughout the process over time to increase that maturity, both in their own business, but also within their digital transformation. Thank you so much, Michael and Andrea, for joining us today and talking us through some of these challenges that 3PLs specifically are going to be facing in the new year. And I hope that our listeners who are of the 3PL industry have gotten something beneficial from our conversation today. I will make sure that your LinkedIn accounts are available so that people can reach you if they have any additional questions. That brings us to the end of our episode. A very, very special thanks to both of you for joining us. If one of our listeners out there has a suggestion for a topic or would like to be a guest on the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact me at podcast@mebach at any time. As always, thanks for listening to Speaking of Supply Chain. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you prefer, and be sure to tune in next time.